Dr. Robert Ayala is on his way to work at Malawi District Hospital. It's one of the busiest hospitals in Malawi. He's been the only doctor working here for 6 months.
So she received the quinine?
Yes. He knows that each morning he'll confront the inevitable toll from the night before.
When we start with the morning report, there are always deaths that are reported. The worst thing you would want to hear in a morning report is death.
Dr. Ayala is solely responsible for hundreds of critically ill patients.
So we're thinking she has uterine fibroids.
As he goes from bed to bed, patients and staff clamor for his attention.
Any pain in the limbs? What's
Dr. Ayala is a bone specialist, and he's the only one in Malawi. But here he performs every kind of surgery. Dr. Ayala doesn't even speak the local language because he's from Uganda.
It's a bit traumatic, huh?
He came to Malawi as a UN volunteer to help with the doctor crisis.
We are working under very difficult condition that it's like we're in a war. We are like fighting a war. And fighting a war on all fronts. So you need to be really a person who is there for the community, that is willing to serve at all costs.
Malawi's own doctors and nurses have left for better jobs in hospitals in the developed world. Malawi now has only one doctor left for every 50,000 people.
The doctors who are working in Africa are really tired. Really. You cannot see all those. You can't serve that population. So you are stretched beyond your limits. Your body gives up.
Dr. Ayala's first surgery today is a patient with third-degree burns to most of her body. There's no morphine, so they use ketamine, a horse tranquilizer, as an anesthetic. She can't feel the pain, but she hallucinates the entire time. Hospitals in Malawi often run out of basic drugs, like antibiotics, leaving doctors powerless to fight infection. In the middle of the surgery, Dr. Ayala is told that there's a problem with another patient.
What's the problem? So he told me there's a man who has a stricture and we don't know what is happening. So in that instance, I can't even think coherently to tell him what to do. And I would need to see the patient. So if I tell him, okay, I think maybe he has this disease condition, and I just tell him go. So I may make a mistake.
Dr. Ayala finishes up the burn surgery, and without a break, he rushes into the hallway, where the man is clearly in pain. He has both HIV and tuberculosis, a deadly dual epidemic. Half of all new TB cases are co-infected with HIV. 90% of AIDS victims die within months of contracting tuberculosis. While I'm filming, the man has a heart attack and gets pushed into the operating room.
There's no pulse. I think he just cardiorespiratory failure. And he aspirated. So
He just died.
He died. We feel bad when we lose a patient because you go home when you're touched. Is a life. You have lost a life. It is painful, like the patient we lost today. It's so painful because you think maybe you could have done something if the patient had come earlier, or you could have done something if you had, all those assistance, the equipment, or everything at hand. So.
We know that everyone has got a right to health, and as government, we are making sure that that provision is there.
Malawi's health minister seems almost in denial about the country's crisis.
Yes, we may have problems, but we are not unique in that area because there are many other countries that have got problems.
Ruth Macambera knows all about Malawi's health problems. As the only nurse midwife for miles, she has delivered more than 10,000 children. Mrs. Macambera retired 5 years ago, but she returned to work when the village had no nurses left.
When I visited my health center and see how people were suffering here, I thought I would assist them for a few years because I'm on contract for 3 years.
Mrs. Macambera practically lives at this rural clinic. She sleeps here 4 nights a week, and she wakes to a sea of faces. Today, pregnant women are being given HIV tests to see if they and their unborn babies have become infected. The women offer me the same advice that they've received. The clinic is run by the NGO Médecins Sans Frontières, MSF, who provide most of the HIV drugs to Malawi. Malawi is under siege from HIV/AIDS, with 100 new infections every day. Healthcare workers here have double the chance of becoming infected than the general public. 25% of Malawi's health staff are expected to die of HIV/AIDS in the next decade.
When I started working, there were no gloves at all. We were delivering babies with bare hands. And it's just through God's grace that I'm alive without infection.
Some villagers have given up making the long journey to the nearest hospital. Navison is a 7-year-old boy who lives with crippling convulsions. When his grandmother does go to the hospital, they often send her home empty-handed. Navison was given sleeping pills, but wasn't ever properly diagnosed. Stories like Navison's are common. Foreign aid donors are often more willing to pay for drugs than for the wages of doctors and nurses. So overworked doctors often just write a prescription without a proper diagnosis. Tiolo District Hospital is shared by Malawi's Ministry of Health and Médecins Sans Frontières. To make up staffing shortfalls, Malawi has put clinical officers on the front line. People like Stanley Chimbawi, a clinical officer with only 3 years training. He's not a doctor, but he's expected to act like one.
Today, I will work, I think, for 24 hours because I'm on call. So usually we work for 24 hours. I'm in emergency. emergency and admissions department.
How much sleep do you get in that 24 hours?
It depends on how much work you have that day. Sometimes when you are busy, you don't sleep at all.
Clinical officers now double as surgeons, even though they haven't been trained for it.
Is she on any medication, any drugs, special drugs for any medical illness?
Dr. Ayala says that given these conditions, he's not surprised that doctors and nurses leave Malawi.
With limited resources, you reach a sort of a point of frustration. And he said, what am I doing here?
The United Kingdom. For decades, when doctors have left Africa in search of better lives overseas, this has been their first port of call. I've come to meet with Dr. Aubrey Makalira, a Malawi-born doctor who now works in a UK hospital. His entire graduating class left for better opportunities in the West. He says it's not just about the money. This is the first time that he's been able to see Western medical techniques firsthand.
My name is Aubrey. I'm one of the doctors. Pleased to meet you. Yeah? And when you come over here overseas, we work in very good hospitals, and these hospitals they train us sort of like to do membership exams, and that's the only way that we get to see what we read in books. They talk of a lot of investigations in their equipment and all that, which we've never seen in our whole lives. Yeah.
Dr. Makalira now works at the Royal Blackburn near Manchester. He's completing his specialty in pediatrics. This ward is a world away from Malawi. It's clean, has modern equipment, and a manageable caseload. But Dr. Makalira will never forget his early days on the wards in Malawi.
It was a daunting experience, and it keeps haunting me until now, because you see the ward is full of patients, some of them sleeping under the bed. There's only one nurse around, one doctor to attend all these patients. Some of them are screaming, some of them are dying. It is very terrifying, very, very terrifying, because people are suffering and there's nothing much that you can do to help them out.
The National Health Service in Britain employs more than 50,000 foreign doctors, most from the developing world.
Yes, yeah.
For years, the Western press has accused Great Britain of doctor poaching. What do you think of when you hear the term doctor poaching?
I don't know that I necessarily agree with the term doctor poaching, because I think that people make individual choices. I think when you talk about poaching, what that conjures up to means taking somebody against their own will, taking an individual against their own will. And actually that's not the case. People are making the decision whether or not they want to make that move. We can't limit an individual's right for migration and for movement.
But things are changing. The United Kingdom recently agreed to stop actively recruiting doctors from the world's poorest countries. It's the first and only Western country to take action to fight Africa's deadly brain drain. But Dr. Makalira believes that the changes in the United Kingdom will not keep doctors and nurses in Malawi.
What you should realize as well is that we are marketable all over the world, and we've got the potential of that. And the question is, if you've got the potential to work anywhere else in the world, why, and you can earn better money, why not go to those areas, earn a good living? Who doesn't want good living?
There was a time when there were more Malawian doctors in Manchester than in all of Malawi. That community has now spread throughout the United Kingdom. But tonight, expatriate Malawi health professionals have gathered near London to hold a fundraiser for their failing medical system back home. When I arrive, I find that there are more Malawian health workers in this one room than I met in any public hospital in Malawi.
I earn quite a good wage here. Why should I go back to Malawi to suffer?
Well, I mean, I would assume it's because Some people would say that you should go back to Malawi because there are no doctors left. Because for financial reasons, all the doctors have left, and there are 2 doctors left per 100,000 people.
Everybody view any profession first to look after your personal interests first, and then you can extend that to Malawi or to any country for that matter. I'm helping my relatives, and that's what I care for.
I can see the dilemma because Malawi is not a very rich country, and the amount of money that nurses get in the UK, the amount of money that doctors get in the UK, Malawi can not simply afford to do that.
Mrs. Makumbera stayed in her home village while most of the nurses of her generation left for better lives overseas. She believes that those who have left have turned their back on Malawi.
They are not assisting their own people. You go to UK and work there, while your brothers and sisters are suffering, having no treatment, no medicine, and no assistance in the hospital, which is sad to me.
Malawi's best hope is here, at the country's only medical college. Until recently, the graduating class each year has been less than 20 doctors, but there are plans to increase that number dramatically in the near future. But the challenge isn't just going to be training new doctors, it's going to be keeping them in the public health system. And of the students I've talked to, most still have a keen eye on what they call the greener pastures of countries like the United Kingdom, America, and even Australia. If you were offered a job in the United Kingdom, would you take it?
I would take it. Because I know it will be even more promising in terms of financial nature as compared to Malawi.
But not all of these students plan on leaving. The few who plan on staying seem to have the strongest ties to family life back home.
I really love a simple lifestyle, and really I want to be amongst people I know and love.
Now, you know, if you go to the United States,
Yes.
you'll be making 200, 300 times the salary
I know that.
you'd be making here.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you think about that?
I do, but still I don't really think that would outweigh the benefits of staying here. I've always wanted that, and I don't think any monetary gains would make me to have second thoughts about it.
The college administration says that it's doing its best to encourage students to stay in Malawi, but that the West needs to do its part.
So that's about the X-linked traits. When they are dominant, they always be expressed.
I think the West has a moral obligation to not make it easy for doctors and health professionals who have been trained abroad in their home countries to leave without very good justification. But I think it needs good faith on both parts. And we don't want to make places a prison. We don't want to make... people should enjoy their profession.
It's left to the people that are sent for training to decide otherwise, to come back home and work for the nation. There's need for that kind of patriotism in each and every nation. That's the way I feel.
Malawi is training a whole lot of new doctors. Do you think that those doctors will stay in the country given the conditions that they're expected to work in?
I think heroes wouldn't quit. And heroes confront situations where nobody can go. Those who are heroic will remain. Those who think they want a job, then they will leave the country. Because I believe many times people who move away from reality, their heart is not for their hearts are not really for the patients. they are not really touched by the suffering the population is undergoing. And our laboratory being...
And now Dr. Ayala is also preparing to leave, back home to Uganda. His contract as a volunteer doctor expires at the end of this year.
My worry is, in a few months' time, I'll be going home. I'll go back to my country. So if I go, like for instance, from my district hospital, who will come?
As Malawi wrestles with its dilemma of how to train and keep its doctors and nurses, the quiet of the early afternoon on the hospital ward is broken by the sound of a funeral passing outside. The 6th today.